Well, hello everybody. Thanks for joining me today. And good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the country you're in. I still see a bunch of people that are signing in, so I'm just going to give them another minute to get settled, and then we will kick off this event. All right. Yeah, for this particular session, we've had a ton of interest on it. So clearly there's a lot of interest in preparing for a cyber incident. And it's great to see so many business leaders actually taking the step to understand what you need to do in the first 24 hours after a cyber incident. All right, that's going to give another 30 seconds, and still see a couple people actually signing in here. So great to see so many people involved. All right, so let's kick things off. So welcome to the first 24 hours after a cyber incident. So really excited to deliver this session. And one of the driving forces of choosing this topic is that the holiday season, in fact, after any major holiday or before any major holiday, is actually a prime time for threat actors to launch their attacks. We see the threat actors specifically choosing the holiday seasons to launch attacks, primarily because it's actually a time when people tend to be a little bit more relaxed. The amount of staffing that's available to look after things is lower, and they're able to actually inflict more severe damage to an organization because of the lower amount of people actually dealing with things. So with that, I'm going to start running through the presentation here. For those of you who have not yet had the pleasure to meet, my name is Vince Fung. I'm the founder here at Expera Information Technology. I would love to stay in touch with you afterwards. So if you have an Instagram account, feel free to follow me. I'm at Ninja Vince. If you have Twitter or X, follow me on that. And please send a connection request. So the QR code's there. Pull out your phones, scan the QR code, and don't just choose follow, but send me a connection request and a quick note to say that you actually met me on the webinar today. If you have any questions afterwards, anything that I might be able to help you with, my email address is there as well. So shoot off an email to me and I will do my best to answer or address any of the items that you have. All right, so again, here's my LinkedIn QR code. Pull out your phones, scan it, and send me a connection request. All right. So for those of you who have not yet met, you might be wondering, who the heck is Vince Fung? And what do I know about managing technology risk? And what do I know about technology and AI in Canadian businesses? Well, if I rewind the clock a little over 4 decades ago, I fell in love with computers at the age of just 10 years old. My family was gifted this amazing machine called the Commodore 64. And interestingly enough, the Commodore 64 is actually back in production. There's a plant in the UK that actually has brought, for the first time in many decades, they're actually manufacturing brand new Commodore 64s. Anyways, I fell in love with computers, started pounding away at the keyboard, spent many hours. I started playing games, but what was really a passion for me was figuring out how to make this computer do things that were not usual things to do on it. And that's the philosophy that I've actually taken throughout the rest of my life is, how do you fully maximize technology and really leverage it to solve life's problems or solve business problems? I loved computers so much that I did a degree at the University of Calgary in electrical engineering and computer science, and then completed an MBA at the Queen's School of Business. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm a certified information systems security professional, CISSP. And so this is one of the highest designations for cybersecurity, and really gave me a ton of the background as I was able to leverage the decades of experience that I have in the IT industry, and also learning about the foundations of security for businesses. I started the company while I was still in the 4th year of university, so way back in 1996. And since 1996, my first 3 clients, who were all companies that wanted to learn how to use technology more effectively, they were kind of the pioneers in leveraging things like the internet, leveraging the cloud technologies. And all of our clients are now obviously with the internet and the cloud, almost every organization relies very heavily on these types of technologies. Unfortunately, with that, over the past decade came this flood of cyber attacks. And that's the topic of the presentation today, is really around how do you protect your organization and how do you prepare for the inevitable cyber attack? Because if you talk to any cybersecurity professional, they're going to tell you it's not a matter of if, but when. And the goal is, how do you make sure that your business is cyber resilient, meaning that if an attack happens, how do you get back into business as quickly as possible and minimize the impact that it has? Just in the last 3 or 4 years, we've also seen this huge flood of interest and adoption of artificial intelligence. And AI is a double-edged sword. It provides organizations with the power to do more, to really leverage a lot more automation, to drive efficiencies. Unfortunately, on the threat actor side, they are also using artificial intelligence to launch a lot of attacks. Recently just saw an article from OpenAI where they actually openly talked about how artificial intelligence has significantly increased the risk of even highly protected organizations of threat actors launching these automated attacks, hitting zero-day vulnerabilities, launching operational technology attacks where the AI actually gets into the network and without any human intervention actually is able to actually move laterally across AI's OT systems and lock things out. So bit of a scary environment that we're in right now. I'm invited today to speak all across North America. I love educating business leaders and technology professionals on new technologies, managing risks and opportunities around AI and how technology can help drive competitive edge and help organizations thrive. Today, we help hundreds of businesses all across Canada, and we help them manage technology, we help them uncover risk, we help them stay protected and identify opportunities for how they can gain a competitive advantage. So with that, let's get started. So here's a shocking fact, is that globally, every 11 seconds, a business is hit with ransomware. Like if you kind of think about the scale of this, it's absolutely insane. 11 seconds, like just in the introduction that I just did over the last couple minutes, that means that approximately 20 or 30 businesses have been hit with ransomware. And the goal of the presentation today is, what do you do if you've been hit? Like your systems get locked out. What exactly are your next steps? What's the road to recovery? Okay. And in the first 24 hours, that's when recovery starts. Or if you don't actually take the right steps, it could actually mean massive fail. And I'm hoping that this presentation actually helps to shed some of the light on exactly what organizations need to do when a cyber attack happens. Just a little bit of background is that, you know how I mentioned that attackers tend to like launching attacks during the holiday season or during like long holidays. The unfortunate reality is that breaches in networks where threat actors actually get in typically go undetected for about 204 days. It means that even today, there is a possibility that there's a threat actor in your network and they're just in there, they're looking around and they're waiting for the time to strike. And regardless of how good of a security set of tools you have, regardless of what we actually do as IT professionals and security professionals to keep the bad guys out, the threat is asymmetrical, right? Like for us on the defense side of things, we have to do things right 100% of the time, like no questions asked. For the threat actors, all they need to do is get it right once and they're potentially in, right? And once they get in, they're kind of sitting there and they're watching, they're looking at emails flowing back and forth. They're trying to understand your business. They're looking at your insurance policies, your financial statements, and they're looking for the most inopportune time to launch an attack. So businesses have to be prepared. Maybe by show of hands, how many of you actually have a detailed incident response plan in place? Right, so this is something that all organizations need to have in place in order to actually be ready for an attack. And the sad truth of it is, from what we're seeing, especially from a small business perspective, I'd say that a good 80 to 85% of companies do not have any incident response plan whatsoever. So we are very ill prepared for what to do when a cyber attack actually happens. Okay. Another thing to consider is how many of you actually have a cyber insurance policy? And based on our own stats, we're seeing that probably only about 48% of businesses that we actually talk to have a cyber insurance policy. There's the belief that rather than investing in a cyber insurance policy, they would rather invest the funds in enhancing security, which seems like a logical step. However, the cost of a cyber insurance policy is a fraction of what you would actually pay if you actually got hit with an attack. So this is a huge consideration that every organization needs to have. Okay, so you've been hit. If you've been hit, the clock starts now. Okay, and if you're in a regulated industry, most regulated industries actually require you to provide the regulators with notice, and you have to actually report it to them within 72 hours, or you could potentially face massive fines. Okay. Another interesting stat is that the average downtime of businesses globally when hit with an attack is about $9,000 per minute. So if you actually look at that compared to the cost of an insurance policy, it's a fraction of what the costs. Okay, and also with small businesses, if they're not able to recover quickly from an attack, or if they've lost data or had to rebuild everything from scratch because of a ransomware attack, 60% of those small and mid-sized businesses close within 6 months. Right, so some pretty scary stats there. All right, so let's take a look at when an attack happens, what exactly do you need to do? What's the response timeline look like? Okay, so your business is on fire. Now what? Okay, so people show up to the office, or maybe people are sitting in the office and suddenly they get all these pop-up messages saying that they've been hit with a ransomware attack. Systems go down, files become inaccessible. Bad things are actually happening. So within the first hour, you need to actually have a containment strategy, right? And this is the critical step to make sure that your organization has the right security tools in place. So containment actually begins before an actual attack happens, right? It's absolutely critical that you actually have tools like EDR, endpoint detection response, MDR, managed detection response, XDR, extended detection response tools, all monitored by 24/7 Security Operations Center, so that if something suspicious is detected, that the tools are able to actually trigger a containment event, right? And what the containment event typically looks like is it's starting to isolate systems to ensure that it stops the spread, right? So without the proper tools in place, some businesses are still relying on the built-in tools in Windows, or using classical antivirus that's without monitoring. If you're still running on those tools, it's going to be impossible for you to quickly isolate an attack, right? So system isolation that happens quickly and effectively is absolutely essential to minimizing what can actually happen with a ransomware attack. Okay, so a few notes about system isolation. So system isolation isn't about running into the server room and unplugging wires in a frenzy, right? Typically, if you start doing stuff like that, really bad things actually happen. And that's why having a clear incident response plan and being prepared for these types of events is essential. Because we've seen time and time again where people actually like see something suspicious, they immediately power off the computer, or they run into the server room, unplug the internet, and turn everything off. It might seem like a good idea, but the problem is when you do something like that, the preserving of the evidence often doesn't actually happen, right? Because a lot of times the attacks that we're seeing are actually attacks that are what are called fileless attacks, where there's no files saved anywhere. They're essentially scripts or code that's actually running only in memory. And as soon as you power systems off, like even if it's a firewall, a server, desktop, or laptop computer, if you turn those systems off, then we're unable to actually get memory dumps and other detailed forensics information, right? So that's a critical aspect, is making sure that your containment strategy doesn't destroy the preservation of evidence. Okay, so once you've triggered the containment strategy, the next thing to do is actually look at incident response activation, right? So if you have an incident response plan, phenomenal. This is the time to start taking the steps and executing on that. If you don't have an incident response plan, like that may not actually play out so well for you, because you're probably going to be very ill prepared, because to figure out what to do in an emergency while the emergency is happening typically doesn't actually lead to good results. So another critical step prior to an incident is to actually have an incident response plan. And I'll share something at the end of the presentation that will help those businesses that don't have detailed incident response plans, right? So the incident response plan should typically include, who do you notify? When do you notify them? How do we actually get the messages out, right? And I'm going to touch on a few steps here in a couple of slides here. So within the first 4 hours, hours 1 to 4, is the time where you assemble and mobilize your incident response team, right? So assembling your IR team is where you actually execute based on what's written in the plan. Who's in charge of running the incident response? Who's in charge of communications? Who's in charge of the technical aspects? Who's in charge of coordinating everything? Who's in charge of reaching out to insurance, to legal, to PR? All of these are critical aspects of your incident response team. So if you don't have an incident response plan in place today, one of the first things that you should do when you get back to the office after this session is to just jot down some notes, right? If an incident was to occur, who within your organization is ultimately going to be leading the entire recovery process? Okay, that might be the CEO or the CFO, or it might be your chief operating officer, but somebody internally within your company has to be leading the charge for that. The second piece of it is, who's going to be handling the technical aspects? Like if you have an internal IT department, who within that technical team is actually leading the rest of the technical team to make sure that they're not stepping over each other and things are being communicated effectively and they're executing the steps effectively. Then the next step is, what about the non-technical aspects, the legal, public relations, HR aspects of what needs to happen in a cyber incident? So when you get back to the office, jot those names down and start at least appointing the person that's responsible for leading incident response within your organization, and who the backup person is in case that person is not available. Though that step alone is going to actually save you a ton of grief and confusion when the inevitable incident occurs. Okay. For those businesses that have cyber insurance, and really I cannot urge enough to seriously look at cyber insurance, because the cost of the attacks these days, like the average ransom payment in 2025 was just under $1 million. It was $978,000 was the average ransom payment, right? And that's just a ransom payment. That doesn't include paying for the incident response team to come in and recover systems, paying for vendors for emergency support, paying for data recovery, paying your lawyers, paying all of this stuff, lost business. Cyber insurance, if you have the right policy for your business, will help to cover the essential aspects of what is needed and tailored specifically for your company, right? So if you have cyber insurance, this is the time in hours 1 to 4 to immediately reach out to the claims department, reach out to your broker who will actually help you open the claim. Regardless of the size of incident, we strongly recommend, if you have cyber insurance, to just reach out to the claims department anyways. Like even if you believe that the claim has been resolved, whether it's even like something as simple as detected malware on a computer or a mailbox that's been breached, we strongly recommend that you reach out to insurance and open up what's called an informational claim. And what an informational claim is it lets the insurance company know that, hey, something has happened, but we don't want to make an actual claim because it's not big enough to do that. But if it turns into something bigger, then at least the insurance is already prepped and ready to go. So really, really important step that businesses need to take there. Okay, whether you have insurance or not, if it's an incident that has significant business impact, this is also now the time to engage breach counsel. So what exactly is breach counsel? Breach counsel is the lawyer that is a specialist in cyber incidents. So they have specialization in actually understanding how to actually navigate the complexities of dealing with a cyber incident. Okay, why is it important to engage breach counsel? Well, number one is by engaging breach counsel as one of the first steps, what happens is if you have the right structure in place, you have an incident, you reach out to breach counsel, and breach counsel then gets involved in engaging with the incident response team, engaging with forensics, engaging with all of the other parties that are actually needed to help you recover. And it's not your company that's going to hire this recovery team directly, but rather the breach counsel is the one that actually hires all of these resources. The reason you'd want to do that is that all of the communication and everything that happens around the recovery process is now protected with the client attorney privilege, meaning that if you end up facing a liability suit from one of your clients or vendors or a third party, all of the information that actually happened within that breach is now protected with that attorney-client privilege. And that ensures that your organization is much better protected from all of these potential spin-off lawsuits that could actually happen. So really, really important to engage breach counsel as one of the early steps, especially if the incident is going to be something that could lead to something that's much bigger. Okay, the breach counsel will generally help you engage with your incident response team. So that could be a third party, because most internal IT departments and even most third-party managed service providers or IT providers do not have the ability to manage incident response effectively, right? It's a very specialized skill set. It requires very specialized people, and it also, from a resourcing perspective, some incidents need to run 24/7 for days or weeks or sometimes even months at a time. And the internal IT departments would not be able to actually be resourced effectively for something like that. So incident response scoping is where you would work with your insurance company, work with the breach counsel, work with the incident responders, figure out what's the scope of the incident. They would price things out. The insurance company would then actually come in and look at it and provide you with advice on, okay, here's what would be covered in the insurance policy, and here's maybe what's out of scope. And then you can actually make decisions around how to best deal with the actual incident when it actually happens. Another huge consideration within the first 4 hours is how do you securely communicate within your organization? How does the incident response team communicate? How does your organization communicate with your employees? How do you communicate with your vendors or clients, right? So this is especially important because most organizations now are reliant on either the Microsoft 365 platform or the Google Cloud platform or Google Apps. And if those platforms were compromised, it means that the threat actor is possibly in there monitoring all of your communication around how you're responding to the incident. And that's not a good thing because they're always going to be one step ahead. So if you're communicating about how you're going to be locking the threat actor out and they happen to see those messages, they're going to know exactly what's happening and then they can evade those maneuvers. So secure communication channels means that ahead of time, you actually have an external method of actually engaging with your staff members and for the incident response team. So there are many options for something like this. There are some tools that are specifically geared towards specifically incident response. So they're encrypted platforms. Some of them are actually even like quantum proof encryption. They're communication platforms that allow you to have secure meetings, whether they're video calls, allow you to share files and instant messages in a very secure manner outside of your regular business systems that might be compromised, to ensure that the recovery efforts are not breached by the threat actors. Some other examples could be, if you're a small organization, you might want to just rely on tools like WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal, one of those instant messengers, and have all of your employees on there and use that as a platform, right? So depending on the size of your organization, how much you have to invest, and how critical your systems are, different platforms would suit your needs. Okay. Also ahead of time, this would be another important step if you go back to the office, is to actually have what's called an incident response call tree. And an incident response call tree is where, in an incident, if everybody was locked out of their files, locked out of their Microsoft 365 or Google Apps accounts, and they cannot communicate using that, how do you actually reach out to your employees to let them know what's going on? So do you have a call tree where you call the managers, and then the managers actually call their sub managers, who then call their various team members that are underneath them to notify them, right? So this is something that you have to have in place before an incident happens, and the call tree details should be stored outside of your critical systems, because if it's actually on those systems and you're locked out of them, you won't be able to access those call trees. So really, really important step. Okay, and then setting up a command center or war room. This is actually where you actually set up a chat or a live communication room where everybody that's directly involved in the incident response can communicate securely to each other to provide updates, right? And these updates are essential to a successful recovery. These updates should also have a certain cadence to them. And this is generally defined ahead of time in your incident response plan, where do you, at different phases of the incident, if you're actually in the containment phase, do you update every 15 minutes or update every hour, right? Or do you, after it's been contained and you're in the recovery phase, do you update on an hourly basis, every 4 hours, or on a daily basis? So depending on your organization, these types of communications should have a cadence that's effective in making sure that everybody is actually looped in and notified of what's going on and kept in the loop. Okay, there's also going to be this forensics triage process, right? So as you contain the threat, one of the first steps that you need to do is like figure out, how did the bad guys get in, right? Who was patient zero, right? Patient zero is the first system or the first employee that got breached. Identifying that is absolutely essential, because without identifying who or what patient zero is, it's going to be impossible to determine if you have truly contained the threat, right? Because without identifying the attack vectors, without identifying how the bad guys got in, it's very possible that as soon as you actually try to start putting systems back online, the threat actor could get back in and wreak havoc again and again and again. So this whole forensics process needs to be triaged, identifying the first systems, identifying the attack vectors, and then with this information, the recovery process can then be guided, right? Because you really cannot start launching recovery until you've actually started figuring those pieces out and have confidence that the threat actors are actually locked out. There are some strategies. Sometimes it's not easy to figure out who patient zero is or how the threat actor got in, but you need to get back into running businesses. So in a situation like that, in your incident response plan, you might actually have a set of systems that you can segment and actually isolate and add additional protection layers on, and start spinning those back up so that you can actually get critical operations back online while you continue the forensics work. So these are all really, really important steps that need to happen. Okay. Then after the first 4 hours, from hours 4 to 12, this is actually where further investigation needs to happen. So if you haven't identified patient zero or the attack vector yet, This would be an ongoing investigation. Then it would be the decision-making process on as to, like, is it safe to start turning systems back online? Which systems do we need to turn back online? And if we're not sure, how do we turn systems back online and start recovering critical applications so that your business can start operating again without it being potentially attacked by the threat actors? So this is a critical step that needs to happen. Hours 4 to 12 is also when collection of logs and analysis needs to start happening. So if you have a incident response team that has a forensics unit involved, they would be asking for log files, everything from firewall logs, server logs. If you have a security information event manager, a SIM tool, or security operations center that collects logs, all of these logs would go over to the forensics team, and they would actually try to trace through these logs to figure out how did the bad guys get in? How far did they get in? Did they exfiltrate data? What else? What other damage did they do? Did they leave back doors so that they could get back in later on? So all of these steps are absolutely critical. Okay, and then hours 4 to 12 is also when you'd want to start engaging with law enforcement, right? So in Canada, we have a number of groups that you'd want to reach out to. So the RCMP has their National Cybercrime Coordination Center, the C3 team. You would report it to them, and they're likely not going to be able to do a ton with it right away. But the importance is you can actually report it to them, and why it's important for them to know about this, and even for the other layers like local police and the Canadian government has the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, is they're collecting information as to exactly what types of attacks are happening to Canadian businesses. Are there patterns there? Are there certain groups that are consistently attacking organizations, right? And all of that information is really, really essential because the RCMP, local police, and the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centers aggregate this information to determine, like, are there additional steps that need to be taken from a government or from a higher level perspective to keep businesses protected, right? And another really important thing that I'd like to point out too is that the RCMP, sometimes they have access to decryption keys, right? That they don't just give them away to everybody, but they potentially have keys. Like RCMP also engages with the FBI down south of the border, and these organizations actually, as they actually research these threat actor groups, they're able to get their hands on decryption keys. So if it's actually a big enough attack, they may actually help you by providing you with the keys to decrypt your data, right? But one thing to keep in mind is don't expect any of the police forces or the Canadian government to respond quickly, right? Like even with insurance, when we talked about that, like you want to reach out to the insurance company within the first hour, but they might not get back to you for several hours, right? They have to actually coordinate resources internally, and it could be 4 hours or 8 hours before you're even able to get breach counsel on the phone, right? So something to really keep in mind is all of these steps, while they're actually important to execute as quickly as possible, sometimes it's a waiting game as well for you to actually get a response back, right? Okay, and then during that time frame, you also want to assess like how bad is the situation across the board, right? If you're a larger organization, you might have pockets of systems that have been hit and isolated. If you're a small organization, it's a lot easier to see the state of the ransomware attack, but the reality is you need to assess the entire state and then actually come up with a plan to recover. Then the next half of the recovery process within the 24 hours 12 to 24, is to stabilize the environment and to start planning for the recovery, right? And to stabilize the environment, what that means is how do you eradicate the threat? Okay? And the unfortunate reality here is that any system that was actually hit or where malware was executed, you have to get rid of whatever happened on that system, right? So some MDR, XDR tools have the ability to roll systems back to a previous state. So that would be an important thing to consider. Other times, the recommendation typically is to just delete everything and rebuild the system from scratch. So threat eradication starts in hours 12 to 24, but it could actually extend days, weeks, or possibly even months, depending on how bad the attack is and how complicated your systems are, right? Another step in threat eradication is sometimes what's happened is the incident response team will actually bring in additional sets of tools. So if you're using one vendor for your EDR, MDR, XDR tools, they may actually bring in a different tool just to actually check to see, is there anything that this tool actually missed that another tool might detect? So these steps take a significant amount of time and require you to take a lot of action and plan to determine which systems need to get brought back online first. If the threat isn't able to be eradicated across the board quickly and you need to get back into operation, segmentation might actually be an option, right? So you might want to build an isolated network to recover some of the systems that are critical to your operations and restore those first so that you can at least get back to servicing your customers, get back to operating your factory or your plant. And finally, once those systems are up and running, you need to then recover your data. And recovering data is also not something that's going to happen overnight, right? In your incident response plan and in the planning process for how to protect your business, one of the critical things that your organization needs to look at is what's called RPO and RTO. So RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. RPO is how much data can you lose before it actually becomes a major issue for your organization. RTO is how long can you be down for before it becomes a major impact to your business, right? And the shorter the RPOs and RTOs, the more expensive the systems are going to be. But it's something that your business needs to seriously look at and find the right balance for your organization. Because recovering data, especially if you're recovering an entire server, could be a process that takes hours or days just to actually restore from backup media, right? So those are critical things. And if for some reason the threat actor has destroyed your backups, now you need to actually look at how do you get your data back without a backup? And that involves negotiations with threat actors. So this may involve negotiating the ransom payment, negotiating how you're going to get the money. So your board and executive should actually decide ahead of time what is considered a material incident for your organization, and are you willing to pay a ransom, right? What are the legal consequences of paying a ransom, right? Because the US government, for example, has actually sanctioned certain countries and Canada as well. So if you're actually sending money to a sanctioned group or sanctioned country, you could actually be in violation of federal laws. And that's a huge consideration as well, right? So one of the reasons why you want to engage that breach counsel ahead of time so that a lot of this stuff that happens behind the scenes is actually protected with that client attorney privilege. Okay, and then as the recovery process continues on, documenting everything that happens every step of the way and ensuring that somebody's accountable is absolutely critical, right? Because at the end of the day, every incident will require an incident report, and this incident report should actually state exactly what happened, exactly what was done, and what the actual known losses are, right? So those reports actually should not contain any inferred or assumed information. It needs to be just all factual information, right? And ultimately, after the first 24 hours has passed, or near the end of the 24 hours, that's when you start looking at what's the road to full system recovery. The reality is that virtually no business will be able to fully recover their system within the first 24 hours. But the goal is to get critical things so that your business can continue operating in some fashion, and plan for the road to the full system recovery, which could be days, weeks, months, depending on how complex and how bad the attack is. So going beyond the crisis, after the cyber incident occurs, your organization would want to learn from it. You want to rebuild stronger, and you want to be proactive to ensure that these types of incidents do not occur again, or if it does occur again, that you respond more effectively to it. So some of you are probably wondering or thinking like, but I already have security, right? I've got like an MDR tool. I've got maybe you're even one of our clients that's using Expera IT as your security provider. That's great, but based on your organization, like as a managed service provider, we provide a core set of tools to our clients, but we also have a lot of extra tools that can be added depending on your special needs, right? So the core set of tools is great for general protection. The question is, do you have the right security for your organization? Remember the RPO, RTO that I was talking about? How much data can you lose and how much time can you be down for? But with the answers to those two questions, you can actually start to assess, do we put extra protections around our critical systems? Do we actually ensure that we have quicker ways to recover systems? Or do we have an alternate way? If the systems were not available, is there an alternate way to maybe manually do things to service our customers, right? Can you think like a hacker, right? Like to truly protect organizations, you have to actually think like a hacker would. Like if a hacker was to be able to exploit certain things, what would those things be? What would maximum damage be? And how could they potentially get in? Could they get in by tricking employees? Could they get in by pretending to be an IT technician? Could they get in through one of your vendors? All of these are different aspects to ensuring how you actually ensure that you have the right security in place so that you're protected. Okay, are your security processes optimized? Do you have a security expert guiding your decisions, right? So for our managed services clients, we have a strategic advisor that's really more around the technology side of things. Like we do touch on security, but we also have a fractional chief security officer team that really helps to guide those security decisions. And we take deeper looks at into what your organization needs, what you currently have in place, and what the potential threats are, right? So having a security expert that guides that, and that's an add-on service that could be hugely beneficial, especially if you're in a regulated industry. Okay, there's also threat intelligence, right? So our security teams actually get threat intelligence from many different sources, and if we see things like a zero-day threat or something that could be something that's impacting your business, we immediately take whatever action we can to try and minimize the attack surface. We try and do mitigations like applying patches or workarounds to secure zero-day vulnerabilities, right? And we assist with things like incident response plans, right? So for those of you that do not have an incident response plan, this is actually a critical step. We also help to review insurance policies. Do you know exactly what your insurance policy actually covers? Are you sure that you've been sold the right policy? Like, does it actually cover the critical systems? Like we've seen policies that cover the corporate network, but don't cover the operational technology network. We've seen policies where the limits are not high enough, or the deductibles are so high that you would never actually be able to make a claim effectively. So looking at all of these things is really an important aspect of security overall in your organization. Remember, thinking like a hacker, could they get in through one of your vendors? What's the impact if one of your vendors was breached? Could they get in? What happens to the data that's stored on the vendors? So assessing vendors to ensure that the vendors that you are working with have the right level of security. Practicing incident response plans through tabletop exercises, auditing and collecting evidence that security controls are working properly, and that security protocols are being followed. All of these are actually part of our fractional vCISO service package that organizations could hugely benefit from. Again, if you're in a regulated industry, publicly traded company, or you have a board that is very serious about ensuring that you can show to them that you're taking the right steps. Like things like vulnerability assessments to assess what vulnerabilities might exist, penetration testing to ensure that the how things are set up. Because the unfortunate reality is like the people looking after your systems, whether you have an internal IT team or outsourcing to an IT provider, we are all human. And what that means is during the course of supporting things, mistakes are going to happen, new vulnerabilities are going to pop up. The goal is to actually find what these vulnerabilities and issues are and fix them before a threat actor finds them and actually gets into your network in an unauthorized way. So what can you do about all this stuff? Should you just go out and spend $200,000 a year hiring a chief security officer? Well, typically a CISO for the vast majority of companies, even if you're like 500 or 1,000 employees, it's not a full-time job, right? And it's also a very expensive resource, right? What about your CIO or your IT guy? Shouldn't they be actually dealing with all the security aspects? Well, the CIO, their goal is to ensure that you have the right technology in place. Of course, security is a certain aspect of it, but their job really is to ensure that technology adoption in your company helps your company succeed in whatever your organization needs to do. The IT people are great at the technical aspects of it, right? So while there is some overlap, the security aspects of managing all the things that I just covered in the last few slides is a very specialized skill set. And we have a fractional CISO program where you don't need a massive budget, you just need a smarter plan, right? So that's our Expera vCISO package. And what we do is we work alongside your IT team, whether you're outsourcing to an MSP, have an internal IT team, or have various components outsourced to various groups. We work very closely with all of your teams, and we provide guidance on security, what the risks are. We do risk assessments. We help you with compliance aspects, and we help you with oversight to ensure that everything is operating and what you have in place is actually set up and operating according to what the requirements are, right? So we'll guide your technical team. We'll provide reporting to your executive teams. We'll provide reporting to your board. And if you are an organization that requires, let's say, a SOC 2 Type 2 report or a NIST 800 audit or an ISO 27001 audit, we can assist with the audit process and ensure that you have the right pieces in place. So when the third-party auditor comes in, that we can actually stick handle all of those components for you. So if you're wondering, like, where is your business really at with security and compliance? If you're wondering if you have the right security controls in place, whether they're actually working, like a mature risk posture really has a number of components, right? You have security, which are the tools. You have compliance, which is making sure that you have the right frameworks in place, policies and procedures. You want to make sure that you have insurance so that when something really big and bad happens, that you have that risk assigned outside of your organization. But you really need oversight, right? So if you're expecting the IT teams to proofread their own work, the reality is that you don't know what you don't know, right? Or they don't know what they don't know. Because even the best IT teams need help. Because IT teams these days are already overwhelmed with day-to-day support issues, with dealing with integrations, dealing with cloud applications, dealing with application updates, upgrades to systems. Like all of the operational items are already a huge burden on your IT team. And they typically need help because they cannot keep up with all of the aspects that are needed to maintain a high security posture for your organization. So what can you do about it? We have a complimentary 26-minute cyber compliance risk assessment. And what we'll do is we'll perform a scan, we'll validate your controls, We'll help you reveal any blind spots that might exist, and we'll provide you with a plain English report with findings, and we'll help you prioritize actions to reduce risk. So this report, we have, what it'll include is we'll identify what the critical aspects are. We'll help you analyze the risk. We'll do internal controls, external vulnerability scan, internal vulnerability scan, analyze your Microsoft 365 tenant, and identify potentially sensitive information that might be saved insecurely. So we have a partner that we work together with that provides these, and each month we actually get 5 of these as a complimentary set of assessments. So we have 5 available today. If you're interested, please scan the QR code now and update it. And we also have the link posted there in the chat if you want to click on that. Okay, if for those of you that do not have an incident response plan, which generally is probably 80% of the companies out there, I'm also going to be personally hosting an incident response plan building workshop in the new year. So this will be held over 2 days. So it's going to be a 4-hour workshop. It's going to be non-technical. So you just need to have a very high level understanding of what critical applications your business has. It is not designed for the technical level people, because they're generally the ones that build a disaster recovery plan. This is actually a high level incident response plan. So it'll be a 4-hour workshop. It's going to be split over 2 days, January 23rd and February the 6th. So they're 2 weeks apart. There's going to be some homework in between the 2 sessions, but we're going to be helping you to build a clear incident response plan that has what the roles are for your incident response team and what the responsibilities are. We're going to have a severity and escalation matrix. We'll actually have checklists for you for your legal and cyber insurance notification. We'll provide you with templates for communication. We're going to provide you a 90-day incident response maturity roadmap. By the end of the 2 days, your organization will have 3 completed incident response plans for business email compromise, which generally involves financial wire fraud. You're going to have a ransomware response plan, and you're going to have a data breach where potentially sensitive data has actually been leaked outside of the organization. So if you're interested in this, this workshop would typically cost approximately $4,000. But for those of you on the webinar today, we're actually offering this at a 75% discount. So this is something that every organization must have in place. If you have a cyber insurance policy in place, typically this is actually also a requirement for your cyber insurance. So if you don't have a plan in place, for just $997, you can attend this workshop, and by the end of the 2 days, you will actually walk away with 3 incident response plans that check a number of boxes and will allow you to be substantially more prepared than you would be otherwise. Okay. I've also got 2 optional components there. So the 2-day workshop will give you the 3 incident response plans. We also have an insurance lawyer who's actually a specialist in breach counsel. They will actually review the insurance policy for you. So normally this is a $1,000 cost to review the policy. If you actually add that on to the workshop, it's an additional $250. And then after the workshop is done, again, this is typically another insurance requirement, is your organization needs to run a tabletop exercise. So we'll run a 90-minute tabletop exercise with your executive team for $997 after that incident response plan has been developed. So full package price, $997 for the 4-hour workshop, $250 add-on for the insurance policy review, and then another $997 if you actually want that IRP tabletop exercise. Typically, this would be over $25,000, $30,000 value if you were to actually hire us to consult with you to do this one-on-one. So I think it's a great opportunity for you to significantly elevate your security posture. So the reality is the threat is real, but so is being prepared for it. So I want to thank all of you for attending today. If anybody has any questions, I can stay on for a few more minutes here and answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so yeah, we had a question of do we do security risk assessments? Absolutely, we do. We can do many layers of security risk assessments. So we've done risk assessments that are simply a penetration test, or we actually do a significantly more comprehensive risk assessment for your organization, where we actually run through a level 2 risk assessment, perform a pen test, and review your policies and procedures, and actually provide all of that stuff. To attend the workshop, it would be the person that would be responsible for the administrative aspects of that. So the price, the $997, would be per company. So if you want to have multiple people attend, absolutely, that would be fantastic. So it's just one price per company. It would be typically best for controller, CFO. I would say that they're the ones that typically are the ones that the IT and security teams report to. That would be one person, chief operating officer, and then possibly a CIO if your organization actually has a high-level technology lead. That would be a good person to attend as well. Any other questions? Will we be offering the workshop at a different date? We may actually offer it again, possibly later on in the year. We don't have any set dates yet, but definitely something that we would consider if there's enough interest for it. Probably be closer to the summertime. All right, I don't see any other questions. So really appreciate everybody joining us today. And again, if you have any questions afterwards, my email address was at the beginning, and also any slides, any of you that are on LinkedIn, send me that connection request, and you can message me on LinkedIn as well. You will receive a recording of this session as well, so you'll get an automated email that actually sends you a follow-up, and you can actually rewatch the session at any time. So thanks again for joining me. We're going to wrap up now.